The other problem with the idea of the city manager type and divorcing it from politics is, and I disagree a little bit with Barbara here. I haven't been here as long. I only came in '78. But when I moved to Sacramento in 1978, I found a place out in what is now Sacramento. What in those days were fields. There was one condo development out there that had gone bankrupt. It had only been built halfway. The second week I was there, I woke up to a crop duster buzzing the condo because literally across what is now Trussell was a field. Right? I lived there until 2001. And one of the things, and this is slightly not a city manager, but when in the late 70s, early 80s, I wanted to take a bus. Yeah. I was working at the Capitol, and I went to RT. There's nice commissioners, managers, not politicians, all of whom either lived in Land Park or East Sac. The general manager lived in East Sac. And I discovered that there wasn't a single bus I could take from Natomas to get me downtown to the Capitol, right, anything less than 45 minutes, because the route went through Arden Fair and then to the Capitol. I could literally walk, I used to walk in the fence. However, if I came out of campus, and my wife worked on campus, my son was now 32, was in a daycare over here, I could at any time walk to the front of campus and have my choice of 4 different buses that went from this campus downtown, walk. Because East Sac was where to use an old-fashioned term, the power elite of Sacramento lived. East Sac, Land Park, Curtis Park, they served themselves. Meadowview was not served very well. And I think the idea of going from at-large to districts is very good because I believe that if you have at-large, where a city council member is elected by the city at large, certain areas are never going to be serviced.
I don't disagree.
Yeah. So I think the city going by districts, however, does also create more polarization, more fights, because Ted and I are fighting about who gets the goodies. Now the last thing, two things for a transition to the proposals. I tend to be an institutionalist in that I believe the structure of the institution influences to a very great degree the outcomes. And Burnett Miller was a strong mayor, and Joe Cerner was a strong mayor, but they overcame institutional structures that limited them. And I think one of the things that we need to do, and what's being seen in a lot of cities, is the old city manager technocrat way isn't up to dealing with the problems of a large and highly diverse population. Now, in terms of the consensus proposal and the review of the commission, we can talk a little bit more.
Well, question.
Right. I would say this: I don't, just to be an all-purpose grump and grouchy guy, I don't think anybody's been served too well by anybody. I think there's been too much spin. I think the original initiative, like I said, it was politically, it was a bad move. The idea of saying, oh, we're just going to tinker with it a little bit and then produce something that, would have made the mayor of Sacramento arguably the most powerful mayor in the entire state. The list of cities, the benchmark cities, there's 12 of them. Cincinnati. Okay. Whoever put this together spun it. I think, Bobby, if you take a look at this, Los Angeles, Phoenix, San Diego, San Antonio, San Jose, Austin, El Paso, Seattle, Fresno, Long Beach, Oakland, Cincinnati. The California ones make sense. There's a preponderance of Texans here. Maybe somebody from Texas was on the commission. What's missing? Denver, right? That has a strong mayor. Boise, Idaho, that has a strong mayor. Albuquerque, New Mexico, that has a strong mayor. But we have Cincinnati, Ohio, that has a weak mayor and council manager system. That's, to me, when I first looked at this, it was like, come on, who are you trying to kid?
That was my reaction.
This was spun, right? And again, to be an all-purpose grump, when I looked at the new plan, I thought this is good, and I think Kevin Johnson, deserves all sorts of kudos for coming up with a really solid, good compromise plan. But it's hard to call it a consensus before it's been publicly debated. Right? that's a spin too. Consensus means there's already been a discussion, there's already been a come to an agreement. We're at the beginning of that process. Personally, I hope we get to the consensus. If this was on the ballot, I personally would vote for it. But it doesn't do anybody any good in public dialogue to put together bogus lists, or not bogus, but loaded, slanted lists, or to proclaim things they have a consensus when we haven't got there yet.
So this is the beginning of that dialogue. And pursuing that, our new associate dean of the School of Social Science, who is the former chair of the Public Policy and Administration Department, Ted, welcome, is going to talk a little bit about his reactions to this as well. Ted Latcher.
Thanks, Mark. I'm going to take actually a little bit of a different cut because to see, and actually make it a little more the academic context. Let's try to put this in a larger context of what we know from the academic literature and comparing Sacramento, what we learned from other cities. And I'll just make a few points and then turn it over to questions. So really 6 basic points. The first one is that in my reading of the literature and the reports is that the long-term trend for large American cities has been towards the strong mayor system. So if you put this in a larger context, the trend has been in the direction that we're talking about in Sacramento, in Sacramento, and that in larger cities, not necessarily in small cities, but in larger cities. And that includes in California. So if you look in California, you look at San Jose, San Francisco, which is a little somewhat odd case because it's a combined city and county. Oakland and San Diego all have adopted at least some elements of making the mayor stronger. So that's that's sort of a bigger trend we look at. The second thing is that, as in Sacramento, advocacy of strong city elements have been driven by concerns about accountability and the mayor's ability to get things done. So the reaction that now there's a more generous interpretation of this, and there's the more cynical interpretation, and I'll give you both. The more generous one is that mayors, Kevin Johnson is one, but mayors in other cities too, have found that when they get interested in the office and they think about all the things that they need to do and that their constituents are asking them to do, they can't do a lot of them very easily because they don't control the departments and they don't control the budget, and they're just another council member or something of that sort, and that's a real problem for them. The more cynical view of it is that, well, sometimes it's easier to blame the structure than to blame, and I agree with Tim that structure makes a big difference, but sometimes it's easier to blame the structure than to say, it's hard work to get things done and work together, etc. But again, I'm saying that that's been the case of lots of places. A third main thing that I've noticed is that the same major structural issues that have been contentious, and at least what I've seen of the discussion here, have been contentious elsewhere. And those are things like, should the mayor or should the mayor not be part of the city council? Should the mayor have separate authority for preparing a budget? Should the mayor appoint the city manager, and should the mayor appoint other city department heads? Those are the big sorts of issues. They've been big issues in the discussion here. They're the big discussion elsewhere. A fourth point is that it's misleading to think about in either or terms about a council manager form of government or a strong mayor. That it turns out that when you really look at American local governments, it's much more complex than that. And there are all kinds of sort of